At 5:17 a.m., the southern desert of Iran was shaken by an unprecedented explosion. This was no test, no accident, but a precise strike from over 12,000 kilometers away, delivered by the United States Air Force. An underground munitions depot, secretly operated by Iran with weapons supplied by Russia and equipment funded by China, was wiped out in less than 8 minutes. The B-2 Spirit, a stealth bomber valued at $2.1 billion, the versatile F-15 War God of the U.S. Air Force, and smart missiles streaked through the desert like silent daggers, severing a critical link in the covert supply chain of the new axis of power. The question is, was this merely a warning shot, or the opening move in a full-scale confrontation between the United States and the trio of Moscow, Beijing, and Tehran? Welcome to B-21 Radar, where conflicts are not just recounted, but decoded through the lens of an expert. Today we'll dive into the analysis of this historic turning point in the unfolding conflict, where modern military technology calls the shots. At dawn on January 16, 2025, the southern Iranian desert, a seemingly tranquil region, was torn apart by an attack without precedent. A column of fire erupted, spreading over 700 meters, accompanied by the sound of destruction. Satellite imagery from above revealed scorched earth, fortified bunkers blown apart, and all activity within a 3-kilometer radius completely halted. This was the first sign that the United States had executed a precision strike, planned months in advance and carried out in mere minutes. The destroyed munitions depot was no random target. According to intelligence sources from the Pentagon, the underground arsenal near the city of Shiraz was a critical node in Iran's covert logistics network. It not only stored long-range rockets manufactured by Russia, but also housed high-tech components smuggled through Pakistan from China, used to assemble suicide drones and short-range tactical missiles. Notably, the site was protected by Iran's domestically developed radar systems, combined with jamming equipment believed to be an upgraded version of Chinese technology, a hybrid defense system thought to be impenetrable. But for the U.S. Air Force, no target is out of reach. 3 B-2 Spirit bombers took off from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri late on January 15th, supported by mid-air refueling. Each aircraft embarked on a nearly 12,000-kilometer journey, crossing Allied airspace in Europe and the Middle East before reaching international airspace off Iran's coast, undetected. No radar signals were emitted, as the B-2 is the ultimate symbol of fifth-generation stealth technology. Each carried 16 AGM-158 JASSM missiles, GPS-guided cruise munitions capable of striking from over 900 kilometers away with accuracy within 1 meter. The U.S. didn't choose JASSM over conventional bombs by chance. Iran's depot was buried deep underground, shielded by over 2 meters of reinforced concrete designed to withstand attacks from older generation aircraft. But when a JASSM is launched from 12 kilometers altitude, it dives at supersonic speed, adjusting its trajectory in the final phase to pierce the target like a razor-sharp blade. A single missile was enough to obliterate a bunker, holding dozens of tons of munitions, while the B-2 glided silently away. In eastern Iran, 2 F-15s appeared 500 kilometers from the target. These weren't just support fighters, but mobile airborne fire bases, carrying over 22 precision-guided missiles, from AIM-120D air-to-air missiles to AGM-158 CLRASM anti-radar and ground target weapons. The F-15's role was to neutralize any response from Iran's air defenses and stand ready to destroy radar stations, command centers, or logistics units attempting to approach the target. 72 hours before the operation, two MQ-9 Reaper UAVs had been deployed from Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, circling above the Persian Gulf. They continuously scanned the terrain with infrared cameras, ground radars, and signal sensors. All data was relayed in real time to the Tactical Command Center in Tampa, Florida, where the U.S. Central Command, CENTCOM, processed it, identified targets, and calibrated GPS coordinates for the cruise missiles. When Iran's depot emitted internal communication signals at 4:53 a.m., the drones detected them, triggering the final strike order for the B-2s and F-15s. Alongside the drones, KH-11 reconnaissance satellites and commercial satellite groups like Maxar and PlanetScope played a key role. They didn't just provide imagery with 10-centimeter resolution, but also delivered heat maps, movement data, and logistics traces around the depot, exposing the entire supply chain linking Iran, Russia, and China. This strike didn't just eliminate a target, it laid bare a cross-border supply route stretching from the port of Haiku through the Tibetan Plateau, Pakistan, and into Iran's desert. The first explosion occurred at 5:17 a.m. Within 4 minutes, all 48 JSSM missiles hit their targets, obliterating 3 main bunkers, 6 secondary munitions storage sites, and the entire underground command complex. Iran's air defense radars detected no threats beforehand, and their surface-to-air missile systems didn't fire a single shot. The entire attack was over before any officer could don body armor. As the sun rose in Washington, President Donald Trump addressed the nation from the White House. "The United States will not wait to be attacked. We will act the moment we know our enemies are preparing. This is the first time." The White House publicly confirmed a strategic airstrike in the Middle East, the first since the U.S. eliminated Qasem Soleimani in 2020. Remarkably, no ground troops were deployed. Not a single American life was lost. Only technology, data, and power from the skies. If a single precision strike could dismantle the Russia-China-Iran munitions supply network, the question arises, was this a one-off blow or the opening salvo in a broader superpower confrontation? You may already know that for years, Iran has denied possessing munitions depots sourced from Russia and China, labeling them as domestically produced or recycled from battlefields. But according to reports from the Royal United Services Institute, AOCIR USI, much of the weaponry Iran supplied to Hezbollah and Shiite militias in Iraq bears technical specifications identical to Soviet-era Russian munitions and Chinese navigation systems. The depot destroyed by the U.S. was part of that chain. Here, Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, stockpiled not only Fajr 5 long-range rockets but also containers of 155mm artillery shells, Grad rockets, surface-to-surface missiles, and notably electronic detonation devices imported from Guangdong, China. Following the war in Ukraine, Russia faced sanctions on its global arms trade, but its weapons flow never stopped. Instead of official exports, Moscow turned to intermediaries, with Iran as a key destination. Grad artillery systems, armor-piercing rounds for T-72 tanks, and BM-21 rocket launchers were shipped to Iran via Belarus and Armenia. Reports from the U.S. National Security Council even indicate Russia supplied Iran with a limited number of Shahed 136 suicide drones for Tehran to study, improve, and produce upgraded copies. The result was the Shahed 238, used to attack Israeli and U.S. infrastructure in Syria, a product blending old Soviet technology with Middle Eastern production lines. Unlike Russia, China didn't supply artillery or rockets directly. Instead, Beijing provided technology, GNSS navigation systems, drone-mounted orientation sensors, swarm control software, and encrypted communication modules. All were manufactured in China and shipped to Iran via Central Asia and Pakistan. These shipments were often disguised as agricultural equipment, civilian machinery, or industrial components, but in reality, they were critical links enabling Iran to build high-precision drone and missile attack systems. A key discovery by the US was the logistics route stretching from China through Pakistan to Iran, unofficially dubbed the Eurasian Fire Road. In this model, China supplied high-tech components, Russia provided munitions, rockets, artillery shells, and heavy military equipment, while Iran received, assembled, stored, and distributed them to proxy battlefields like Syria, Iraq, Yemen, and Gaza. This route crossed the Pamir Plateau, passed through Gilgit-Baltistan, and entered Iran via the Zaran Pass, a new kind of logistics corridor uncontrolled by NATO and barely mentioned in Western media. Until the Shiraz depot was destroyed, according to sources from the U.S. National Security Agency, NSA, the operation to monitor the Iran-Russia-China network began in late 2023. Data from communications between Tehran, Moscow, and Beijing revealed suspicious coordination in container shipments, technical flights, and high-end civilian technology orders. U.S. Global Hawk drones repeatedly captured footage of armored military convoys carrying containers from Iran's eastern border southward to logistics depots. Notably, intercepted SIGINT satellite recordings revealed IRGC commanders directly coordinating with Russian military advisors to cool missiles before storage in deep bunkers, a technique used only for advanced warheads. The question is, has Iran acquired thermally guided warheads? And if so, where did they come from? Some experts suggest the U.S. may have known about the Shiraz depot early on but waited for the perfect moment to strike. When Russia was redeploying forces to Syria after losses in Ukraine, China was escalating pressure on Taiwan, forcing a U.S. response, and Iran was ramping up munitions shipments to Yemen and Iraq on an unprecedented scale. Failure to act would have cost the U.S. control over the Middle East's weapons supply chain. With Donald Trump's re-election as U.S. president, the strategic message was clear. Strike preemptively, strike precisely, and strike where the enemy can't react. The question remains, if Iran, Russia, and China have built such a sophisticated covert military supply network, how many other depots like Shiraz exist that we don't yet know about? And did this strike disrupt the network or merely push it deeper into the shadows? When Iran's strategic depot at Shiraz was erased, the covert logistics network linking Tehran, Moscow, and Beijing was exposed, and Washington was the first to act. But in the global chessboard of strategy, no strike is unilateral. Every move triggers consequences, and every attack invites retaliation. Just 12 hours after the strike, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps issued a statement. The U.S. has gravely violated Iran's sovereignty. We will respond at a time and place of our choosing. A cryptic but far from empty threat. Within 24 hours, a swarm of suicide drones was launched from Syrian territory targeting Al-Tanf, a U.S. Special Forces base in eastern Syria. Most were shot down by CRAM air defenses, but one breached and hit a supply depot, causing minor damage. This was Iran's first warning. No direct counterattack, but a proxy strike in a region the U.S. struggles to control. Days after the Shiraz airstrike, in southern Lebanon, Hezbollah intensified rocket attacks on Israeli military positions in the Golan Heights. In Yemen, the Houthis vowed to escalate military operations against U.S. and Israeli interests in the Gulf of Aden. This was no coincidence. The destroyed depot had supplied rockets, artillery shells, and explosives to both Hezbollah and the Houthis for 5 years. For these groups, it wasn't just the loss of a weapons cache, it was the loss of a lifeline. Moscow didn't stay silent. Russia's foreign ministry spokesperson called the U.S. strike on Iranian soil an act of aggression crossing a red line. We will not stand idly by as our allies are threatened, they declared. Western intelligence soon detected Russia deploying an S-500 Prometheus radar unit to Mehrabad military airport in Tehran, the first time Russia's most advanced long-range air defense system was stationed abroad, capable of detecting targets over 600 kilometers away. The S-500 doesn't just protect Iran's airspace, it sends a strategic signal. Russia is shielding Tehran. Unlike Iran and Russia, China's response unfolded, not in the Persian Gulf, but in the Western Pacific. Following the Shiraz depot strike, China bolstered its naval presence in the Taiwan Strait. 3 Type 055 destroyers and 2 Shang-class nuclear submarines were spotted nearing Taiwan's exclusive economic zone within 48 hours of the attack. Simultaneously, Chinese state media uniformly reported, "The United States is pushing the world to the brink of global war for its own narrow interests." Beijing didn't retaliate for Iran but sent a clear message. If the U.S. continues targeting our allies, we will apply pressure on other fronts. With actions from Iran, Russia, and China, the world faces a very real risk. War is no longer confined to one region but could spread across multiple fronts simultaneously. In Syria, Iran-backed militias began ambushing U.S. logistics convoys along the strategic Iraq-Aleppo highway. In Iraq, Kataib Hezbollah intensified pressure on the Green Zone, home to the U.S. Embassy. In Yemen, U.S. radar bases on Param Island faced Houthi threats of cruise missile attacks. In Taiwan, China ramped up J-16 and J-20 incursions into Taiwan's air defense identification zone, reaching 50 aircraft per day. And in Ukraine, Russia unexpectedly opened a new front in Kharkiv, while the U.S. was stretched thin. The essence of this confrontation lies not in a single depot, but in the supply chain, the ability to sustain warfare through sea, land, and cyberspace. By destroying the Shiraz depot, the U.S. didn't just disrupt weapon supplies to proxies, it tested the enemy's response, breaking one link to reveal the entire chain behind it. When Iran, Russia, and China reacted, the U.S. gained what strategists call a comprehensive map of their adversaries. The question is, with the U.S. forced to maintain a presence in the Middle East, Eastern Europe, and the Indo-Pacific simultaneously, can it sustain its proactive strike capability, or will it be forced to hunker down defensively? And if Donald Trump opts to counterattack across all 3 fronts, is the world inching closer to a global conflict? In the wake of the Shiraz depot strike and the cascading responses from Iran, Russia, and China, Washington went silent for nearly 48 hours. No official statements, no press briefings, no Pentagon comments, just silence. But in that silence lay the clearest signal. The U.S. was preparing its next move. A deterrent strike not just to punish one depot, but to send a message to the rest of the world. On the 3rd day after the airstrike, President Donald Trump took the podium at the Pentagon, awaited by the global press. No flourish, no evasion, he spoke bluntly. "The United States does not seek war, but if you keep aiding our enemies, Be prepared to pay a price with your depots, your bases, or whatever you're hiding underground. A chilling statement, a clear message, and the sharpest deterrent since the U.S. airstrike killed Qasem Soleimani in Baghdad in 2020. Immediately after the speech, CENTCOM launched Operation Sentinel Search, aiming to bolster U.S. naval and air forces at 3 hotspots: the Persian Gulf, Eastern Mediterranean, and South China Sea, Western Pacific. The USS Gerald R. Ford carrier was redeployed to the Middle East ahead of schedule. Simultaneously, B-1B Lancer strategic bombers arrived at Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, fully equipped to carry bunker-busting bombs and cruise missiles. On the ground, the 82nd Airborne Division was placed on 18-hour deployment alert, the highest peacetime readiness level. This wasn't a show of force, it was Trump's way of signaling resolve. There's no safe haven for those fueling war. Within a week, the Pentagon publicly rolled out its latest systems to the front lines. F-35A fighters with upgraded Block 4. Configurations carried Spear, 3 air-to-ground missiles, capable of striking multiple targets simultaneously. MQ-25 Stingray drones not only provided refueling but also guided precision naval strikes. The new EC-37B Compass Call electronic warfare system disrupted enemy communications and radars. A next-generation NROL-103 reconnaissance satellite, launched from Florida, could capture images through clouds and thermal camouflage. Nothing could hide. The U.S. was telling the world, "We see you wherever you are." Since his re-election, Donald Trump has reshaped U.S. foreign policy. No more waiting for an enemy attack, no more reacting after damage is done. If a threat is forming, the U.S. will strike first with precision without warning. Strategists call this 21st century preemptive deterrence. It relies not on ground troops or bases, but on technological superiority. Drones, long-range missiles, and a global, high-speed command network. Trump pushed defense spending to a record $820 billion in 2025, enabling operations like Shiraz, where an underground depot was erased without a single American soldier setting foot on the ground. Though the speech didn't name Moscow or Beijing, the message was clear. Trump stated, "If you supply artillery, fund sensor technology, or dig missile bunkers, you're no longer a neutral observer. You're part of the problem." Analysts see this as a direct jab at Russia and China. The U.S. won't strike them first, but if they keep backing Iran, the consequences are unpredictable. No total war is needed, just precise strikes to sever critical links. Following Trump's message, NATO declared support for the U.S.'s right to self-defense. The UK, France, and Germany issued a joint statement. The U.S. has the right to protect its forces and legitimate interests in the Middle East. Russia called an emergency UN meeting, condemning the U.S. for unilateral actions destabilizing the region. China took a softer tone but quietly deployed 2 Type 052D cruisers to the South China Sea. Iran vowed, "This grudge will not be forgotten." Strategists now acknowledge that under Trump, the U.S. no longer needs to occupy established bases or deploy tens of thousands of troops. Instead, it controls the skies, information networks, space, and global supply chains. A new kind of warfare, no trenches, no tanks crossing borders, just precision strikes from thousands of kilometers away, paralyzing an enemy's war-making capacity before they can act. This is how Trump is reshaping the world. The speech ended with a quiet but resonant line. "We don't demand your loyalty. We only ask that you not fuel war." A strategic yet human statement. In a world where information is a weapon, in an era where drones, satellites, and AI determine victory, whoever controls technology controls the future. After the Shiraz depot was wiped off the map, after Iran, Russia, and China were exposed in a covert alliance after Trump unveiled his 21st century preemptive deterrence doctrine, the question looms. In a world where a single button can incinerate an entire base, will you stand with those holding the button or those who can destroy it first? Thank you for watching our analysis of this conflict's developments. Here at B21 Raider, we don't just tell stories, we dissect every move, tactic, and shadow behind each war. If you're passionate about geopolitics, military power, and what's really happening behind the global battlefield's curtain, this channel is for you. Don't forget to subscribe, as each video paints a new picture filled with data, analysis, and truths not everyone dares to speak. If you find this content valuable, leave a comment to share your perspective. War is no game, and every viewpoint matters.